Okay, welcome, Kathleen, to the Profits Podcast, where we talk everything around profits for DTC companies and e-commerce companies. Really, really excited to have a fellow supply chain geek or supply chain nerd. I'm very proud of that title. I hope you are as well.
I am.
But let's start off. If you can tell us a little about yourself and a little about your background, that'll be super helpful.
Yeah, so I go between saying supply chain geek and startup junkie.
Love it.
Um, those are the ways I describe myself. I have been a brand founder and had some exits and got the opportunity to start consulting and helping other brands and decided why not? Why not use everything that I've learned and everything that I've been doing and help other brands avoid some of the pitfalls and get more efficient. And I love the title of the podcast because I always say that sales and marketing are going to drive your revenue, but operations is going to drive your profit. So it's absolutely right on point. So I consult with brands. I also work with a couple software companies that are making solutions for brands in helping them inform what the product should do and what brands need and where the pain points are. So that's been a really fun project to add to working directly for brands. I always stay on the operations side. I never do like sales, marketing, SEO. I don't know anything about that. So it's always supply chain, logistics, order management, tech stack, anything that involves kind of moving the product around
Love
falls
it.
into my wheelhouse.
Love that. And I think also as a consumer, our background was a consumer business. And like you said, very often the sexier word is marketing. Like, how do I improve my CPC? How do I have my
Yeah,
conversion rate? And that's been most of the conversation. And like you, I'm more excited to dive into like, no, the nitty gritty. Like that is where the profits lie. Once you figure out your marketing side, the business will survive based on operations. So I think we're fully
ab-
aligned on let's talk about
absolutely.
the messier side of the business. So
Yeah.
maybe give me an example, like how's an example that you help brands? You don't have to name a brand, but like what would be an example that you dove into a business and give us an example of like what that could look like?
Yeah, so I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, and I'm sure anybody listening to this podcast that's been running a brand is going to be nodding their heads. A brand starts on spreadsheets. They start with their Google Sheets and they just start building things. They make their SKU lists and then they start figuring out sales and marketing and orders and all of that. And the operations side just sort of falls by the wayside. Even, looking for what tariff code should you be using if you're going to be importing and things like that. And so it's always that stuff comes afterwards. And so it's not super organized and planned and it's not set up for being scalable.
Yeah.
And so one of my favorite things is going into a brand that has been doing that because that's how you start. And then you hit an inflection point. So my favorite thing is going in and identifying all of those places where something could change, something could be automated, something could be more efficient. Any sort of thing that's happening where maybe they're doing manual processes and they should be automating, or they have an automated process that isn't quite working. And so I'll go in and help them optimize for that and figure it out. And then afterwards, I leave and I leave them with a whole new ecosystem. So I had a brand that I worked for that they got up to $25 million in revenue. Absolutely awesome product, awesome brand. Had everything on spreadsheets. They even they had their own warehouse and they didn't have a WMS. They were running that on spreadsheets too. And so we put in an entire end-to-end tech stack. And it was really cool. And one of my last projects before that part was over was I did a huge report for them on their specific product and bringing it into other countries, what certifications they needed, what they needed to get through import customs, what kinds of fees to expect. So that was fun because it was like setting them up for success and then giving them the next step for expansion.
Got it. So like, and I've mentioned this before with some of my last podcasts. One of the beautiful thing of a startup is nobody knows anything. You come in, you're almost a little stupid, right? Which is,
Yeah.
I think, one of the superpowers. We come in being a little stupid, and then we're like, we believe we could do anything, and somehow it gets done.
Yeah.
And a few $100,000 of revenue to a few $1 million of revenue. In the case of $25 million in revenue on spreadsheets is mind blowing, but they got it done, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and at some point, I guess in the company's lifetime, they're like, okay, this could be better. There's a better way to do this. And I guess that's where you come in and be like, okay, let's take a look at your landscape, all these areas. Is there a consistent bottleneck you see at these brands, either it's 5 million or 25 million, like every time, 9 times out of 10. And the scenario you gave was like WMS. Well, not everyone's running a warehouse.
Yeah.
It's with that one consistent bucket that you constantly see that you can help them lean in to run either better or more profitable.
Yeah, it's always demand planning. It's always related to inventory because you can oversupply, you can undersupply, you cannot plan correctly for timing. And either way, there's a huge impact to your bottom line. Operations not done right can break your company. So it's really critical to get that piece right. And the financial impact of inventory, not everyone can do just in time inventory. One of the things about Portless that I like is that it allows for just in time inventory. And I think that's one of the coolest things about your business model. But if someone's doing a lot of B2B and they're bringing everything into the US and they're sending it out in pallets, they're going to need to really pre-plan and focus. And so I will start with an S&OP. It's sales and operations planning. So what I do is I always ask them to give me an org chart. Give me an org chart of your company. And it's always linear, up and down. Yep. And it always has, here's, finance, here's sales and marketing, here's IT, here's operations, customer service is out there kind of on their own, don't really go anywhere. And then the CEO's on top of everything, which is a recipe for burnout completely. And also silos, information silos between departments, because they're all being run individually. And so what I do is I have them switch and put their organization in more of a circular pattern. So sales is communicating with operations about projections and sales and what's coming up and what conversations they're having. Operations knows how much inventory they need to order as a result of that conversation. Then they start figuring out cost of goods. They pass that to finance. Finance then goes back to sales with, here's the minimum that you have to charge and you can't negotiate past this point. So it maintains that profit level, but it also has all departments talking to each other. And then I put customer service in the middle. They are the heart and soul of the company. They need to know everything. They need to know about inventory. They need to know about tech stack. They need to know about warranties and manufacturing and lead times. They need to know what's going on in sales. They need to know what promotions are coming up so they can expect it. They need to know everything. And so when you put them in the center, then they can. And what that does is it reduces internal communication between customer service and the rest of the teams, and they can answer questions faster, give better service to the end customers, and then the rest of the teams are all working in tangent instead of siloed. So that will solve a lot of the problems in a company, because a lot of the problems are created by things being siloed, including demand planning. If ops isn't communicating well with sales, marketing, know what's going on for promotions, can look at the data and figure out what's coming up, they're not going to be able to order the right volume of inventory. And then, with finance being involved, it's like, well, okay, so we want to order inventory, but here's your budget. Here's how much you have. Maybe you can't order as much as you want to, and you're going to have to do some pivots. So it all starts with getting everyone talking to each other.
Two fascinating buckets here, and I want to go a little deeper if you don't mind. The putting support team in the middle is quite a unique approach. Like, I don't think I've seen that in too many places. So are you saying that, like, when you say you put them in the middle of the organization, is it from the perspective that they have to be updated on everything going on at every part of the company? Or are they the listening ear to the consumers? They actually know best.
They're both. They are both. So it's a super good question. So they're in the middle and they know what's going on in the company. So for example, they know what's happening in operations. They know what inventory is coming in. They know when something's about to go out of stock. They know if there's something that's going wrong in terms of maybe quality control. So there are maybe some warranty things coming up that they are aware of. So when end consumers contact them, they have the answers. Same with they're working with sales and marketing. They know what's going out there. They know what's being said. They know what's being put in the ads. They know how often ads are running. So they know what to expect as far as what's coming in. What's being said in a video about this product. Then when questions come in based on something said in the video, they know the answer because they know what sales and marketing have told the end customer in the advertising. So they are a little bit of everything, and they understand a little bit of everything that's happening. When there's inbound stock coming to the 3PL warehouse, they know. So then they know they can tell people, well, that's back ordered, but we anticipate it'll be here in 3 weeks. So having them in that center as far as what's happening in the company makes a huge difference. And then likewise, they know exactly what's going on outside. They know what's being said. They know if people are unhappy, they know why, they know what's breaking, they know what warranty thing is coming all at the same time. That has to go back to ops so that ops can communicate with the manufacturer. Also has to go to finance so finance can request a credit or from the manufacturer for the things that didn't work. So having all of that tied together, having their pulse on what's going on in the market allows everyone to work more efficiently, and it allows you to find all of those operational profit places where you're losing money. For example, this warranty thing, if you're not tracking what's going on with your product, and if there's a specific thing that's failing, then you're not going back to your manufacturer and asking for a credit and asking for a fix. So customer service has the keys to that castle. And so often that is outsourced to people that don't know your product. And it's just, oh, we're going to do a VA or we're going to use AI. I think that's a huge mistake. I think the person who is the heart and soul should really be the heart and soul. You don't go for the discount. You go for someone that can really make a difference internally and externally for your company.
I love it. This is such a unique approach. Arguably, a lot of people will disagree, but I love your perspective where they are the heart and soul. They know everything in the consumer, unbiasedly know everything because they're getting the feedback. They're getting scream at or if someone's upset, and they connect all the dots to all the other operations. So I love this unique approach, and I actually think it's rarely heard it, and I actually agree with that. So love what you're building there. Now, would love to go a little into inventory planning. I think that is one of the like the most complex areas of the business that most people don't understand. And to your point, it can make or break you. Like in fashion, 34% of on average of fashion is excess inventory. And that means you're liquidating at a loss, unfortunately going to landfills, but hitting your bottom line. Or the other side of that coin, which is just as bad, underproduction. If you get wrong in underproduction, well, there's demand and you just lost sales, invisible losses. So it's such a complex move. And I know it could go as far as like the type of raw materials you need to buy around the world, to production times, to lead times. So I'm curious, like, where do you start there? Do you use software? Is that back to Excel math? How do you approach that?
It's a little bit of everything. It's funny. I always say that demand planning done really well is it's analytics and it's data, but I think it's a little bit of pixie dust too,
Yep.
because you're having to kind of look forward and figure out what might happen. You have to look backwards. Now, if you're introducing a new product, there is no look backwards.
Yeah.
So that's where the software doesn't work
Yeah.
when you're introducing something new, because the software that's generating those kinds of insights can only do it based on what has happened already.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it could analyze a competitor and analyze how they're doing now that software has come so far. That is possible. There are some cheats that you can do with a new product, especially if you do have competition. You can search their imports. And if they have not asked the government for manifest confidentiality, which if you're a brand and you're listening to this and you're in the US, get on the government dashboard and apply for manifest confidentiality. It's free.
That's brilliant.
But what it does is it's public knowledge, anything that goes on a manifest of a ship and gets imported into the United States.
That's crazy.
So unless you ask for it to be confidential, it's out there. And you can actually search your competition. Say you're selling water bottles, you can search your competition and see how often they're importing, how many they're importing. You can see where they manufacture. You can
Yeah.
see their factory, which is why, again, if you don't have manifest confidentiality in place, get it in place now. It lasts for 2.5 years and it's free.
Or call Kathleen and research the competitor. So
Yeah. So that's kind of it's a little cheat into, okay, how is a competitor doing with a similar thing? Now you
understand
can't,
the name of the competitor.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you can do things, for example, the Stanley water bottles are so, they've gone viral because of the social
Yeah.
media aspect of it. But there are other water bottles that are competitive to it that are enjoying the surge because people are seeing those everywhere. So even though it might not be in their own forecast based on their past history, they can look at what's going on in the world and they can go, oh, we need to make sure and stock up. but over and under is a huge deal. Sometimes it can be a financial decision. But the problem with understocking, because maybe you can't afford to really fully stock, is when you run out, you're losing money, but also you start to panic and then you change how you're going to bring it in. You choose air shipping, which is going to cost you 10 times as much as ocean freight. So by not planning right, the costs are so much higher as far as the ripple effect of it. And it's really important to look at all of those pieces. Not impossible, and it certainly can be done with spreadsheets. I've seen some really beautifully complex spreadsheets that are running things out, and I've seen some Google Sheets that are actually API tied to like Shopify and Amazon and pulling current numbers, and you can set the time frame and change it out. There's some really good software that's coming out that they're really working. It seems like a lot of companies are working to solve this one. Um, so and everybody has kind of a piece of it. Sin7, after their acquisition of Deere, do a really good job with cost of goods on the inventory and lot tracking and expiration dates. But still that look forward isn't quite there yet. There's a company called Centro Commerce that's doing some really cool stuff with inventory and demand planning. And so I've been watching them really closely. So, and Luminous is doing some really cool stuff. So, there's people know that it's an issue that has to be
Yeah.
solved, and everyone's trying to figure out how. But it all starts with data. It all starts with insights. I consult with a company called Octup that is doing AI insights for operations for e-commerce, and they really focus entirely on the operations side. And they're doing some really cool stuff where they pull in the data and they don't just say, here's what the data says. They give you actions.
Yeah.
Well, because of this, you could do this, this, or this, and then here's the ramifications of each one, pros and cons of each direction you could go. It's my goal that software like that eventually replaces people like me, so that not every brand has to have a high level ops person on staff if they have the right tools in place that can help them.
Yeah. I actually know Octop. I'm actually having them on the podcast. I love Alon and Michael.
Yeah,
They're great. So I'm excited to have them. And to your point on one last area of this, most brands don't realize this is a pain point until they're actually scaling, right? In the
yeah,
early days, like you're just trying to figure out what marketing strategy will work. You do have to figure out distribution. It's Amazon, FBM, it's Facebook, it's TikTok, whatever it is. But once things are starting to sell and you're sold out, that's like, okay, is all the profits in inventory? Is some of the profits in inventory? How do we approach it? So it's a good problem to have, but a problem nonetheless when your business is growing.
it is. Well, and like you said, that they don't realize until as they're scaling. But what happens at the beginning when someone's first launching a company, whether you have invented your own product or you're buying finished goods that somebody else has, there's a minimum order quantity. So
Yep.
whether you're a CPG company making cookies, or whether you're buying from something from China or apparel or water bottles,
Yep.
you have to stock a certain amount to start your company. And
Yep.
so they all have that to start with.
Yep.
So it's not based on projections, it's not based on plan, it's based on forced by the procurement side of here's the minimum you have to order in order to buy this product or the raw material from us. So
Yep.
they start with that, and then they don't really watch the trends of where that initial inventory is going and at how fast and what rate and what is changing. What ad that they put out made this one SKU fly out the door.
Yep.
So that's where they're going to get their future planning, even though the volume they started with was a required volume. But it seems like they don't, because that first volume wasn't a planned volume, then it makes it harder for the next one. Like, well, we had to order, 2,000 the first time.
Yep.
But I wonder if we order 4,000 this time, if we can get the price down. Well,
Yep.
do you really need 4,000?
Yep.
Maybe, run the numbers on that first 2,000 and figure that out. So that's where that data and the analytics come in, where you really start digging into more granular,
Yep.
because that first decision is being forced by your procurement, but it's
Yep.
your second decision that you're making.
Yep. And the first one, you have very little negotiating power because you're brand new. But
None.
as you get business, you can understand what are the levers of MOQ. Is it raw materials? Is it training? Is
Yep.
it production time? And you can get a little more creative as you get a little more leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a little more money under your belt, hopefully, because you've had some revenue. Now, it costs money to start a company, right? So you've put a bunch of money into that initial thing, and your first inventory cost more. So
Yeah.
then as you're analyzing future, your cost of goods is changing too. Maybe you can shave a few cents off in the next one because you know more.
Yeah.
So each time that you hit one of those inflection points is the time to completely reevaluate and analyze. There's ongoing analysis in that S&OP where you're kind of tracking things as you all the way along. But then there's big inflection points where it's time to really dig into the data and go, okay, where are we going? What direction? Which SKUs do we need to de-emphasize, or which colors? Because it's just not working. And then these other ones that are working, let's get more of that. However, is it a clothing item? Is it seasonal? Maybe that color isn't going to be so great when you get your product in 3 months. So you have to think about that too. You have to go, way forward.
Gotta look around the corner. I love it.
Yeah,
Let's jump into another part of supply chain, which is logistics and 3PLs. I think you just did a whole series on LinkedIn about 3PLs
I
and how
did.
businesses could grow and be efficient with them. So I'd love to get your perspective. When a company is evaluating a potential 3PL partner, what do they need to look for? What is the right things to look for to make sure it's the right fit for their business? So I know you did a whole series. Love to just get a high level from you on
I
this.
did. So the number one thing that I always say, and you've heard this a million times, do not Google to find your fulfillment partner. Ad spend does not equal fit. Just
Yeah.
because it's the first thing that popped up doesn't mean that it's the right fit for your company. It could be the right fit for a different company, but maybe not for yours. Maybe
Yeah.
you have special requirements. Maybe you're making chocolate, so you need a certain temperature.
Yeah.
Maybe you're at certain volumes, maybe low volumes, so you need a warehouse that's willing to take a chance with startups. Maybe your volumes are very, very high, and so you need a bigger warehouse that's more distributed and spread into more places, has more locations across geographies and across the US and into other countries. Maybe you want to kind of stick with one and have one WMS, but you're spreading your inventory out. So each brand has a specific need and has specific requirements. And so it's important to figure out first what you are. So you fill out your own little questionnaire. How many SKUs do I have? What's my volume? What geographies am I selling into? What shipping, speeds and carriers have I promised to my customers? What do I need as far as storage? Does it need to be temperature controlled? Can pallets be stacked on top of each other, or is my stuff fragile and they can't be stacked? So that's going to take up more floor space in a warehouse. All of those things need to be looked at to figure out what the brand's requirements are. What's your tech stack? Are you using NetSuite? Are you using different sales channels? Are you using marketplaces? Are you using EDI? It's really important that they identify their own ecosystem before they can go figure it out if something else is a fit. And that ecosystem of their own is going to determine what they need. Maybe they're looking at it going, all right, I need to be on the West Coast of the US because I'm importing from China. And then I also want one on the East Coast of the US because I have a ton of customers on that coast. Or maybe you want just-in-time inventory going from China straight into the US, and you want to have your stuff over there because you don't want to deal with putting it on the ocean. So you've got to figure out what your situation is in order to figure out what warehouse might be the right fit. Otherwise, every conversation you have is a waste because you don't even know what you are, much less what you need.
Love that. Audit yourself first. Figure out what are the key things you need before you start knocking on any doors at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of warehouses, like maybe you're a startup and you have to have a warehouse because you're doing B2B and they're requiring that you have a 3PL before they'll do a contract with you, but your
Yeah.
volume is low. Well, you're going to have to find a warehouse that's willing to roll the dice with somebody that's more of a startup. And so that's an entirely different conversation than going to a 4PL or a warehouse that's distributed where you're spreading your inventory all over the place. Finding a warehouse that's willing to work with you is a different conversation. It might cost a little more upfront because your volumes are lower,
Yeah.
but you can talk with them about growth and scalability, and they can tell you about the other brands they've helped scale and worked with. So it all depends on what you need. Maybe you want handwritten thank you notes with every single order, and a lot of warehouses can do that, but a lot can't. So you have to know in order to do the right match and make the right fit.
Love it. Um, I want to ask your perspective from a technology perspective. So technology is coming out all the time. There's all this, you got anything from ChatGPT, which arguably you're against. Do not use that for customer service. I would say that's
I
like
am.
yeah, which is unique, and I like it. But what do you think from an upcoming technology that you're seeing on the playing field? Like, oh, this piece of technology could potentially have the biggest impact to your business?
You know, AI it will have impact. It's
Okay.
not there yet. Right now it's having impact for people that write, where you're dealing with facts that are out there. AI can only work with what it can find.
Yep.
So things like analytics and insights and what to do with it, the actions, it's not there on
Wow.
that yet. And it might be eventually, it's garbage in, garbage out, but the more that you program and the better insights that you can put in there and the action items. I know for me, when I see a certain data set, here's my actions. Well,
Yep.
if those are something that I know that I can repeat, then that's something AI can learn. So I think AI is definitely up and coming. I think that the concept of the demand planning and inventory, technology wise,
Yep.
really is an important piece that I'm really excited to see people trying to solve. And then that next piece of omni-channel. So people use multi-channel and omni-channel interchangeably, and it's not.
Yep.
If you look at the first section of those words, it's not the same thing.
Yep.
But people do use it. I mean, you have a brand that starts out, maybe they have one sales channel, maybe they're on Shopify and they have one warehouse and everything's going great, but they're growing and they're adding sales channels, or they're adding retail and EDI and selling to Walmart and Target, and they're adding 3 more warehouses. And now they're in a situation where all of their stuff is disconnected. Their operations team is logging into every single one of those dashboards every single day, looking for problems, trying to solve them. They're being reactive instead of proactive 100% of their time. And that's really inefficient. And so at that point, they need order management. They need sort of a centralized location for where all their data is coming in, passing to warehouses, picking up tracking, passing back. That can be an ERP system, but a lot of companies are too small for an ERP or just don't want to deal with the $100,000 it takes to put one in. And so for those, especially having order management is really, really critical, because their operations team needs to be proactive, not reactive. And so by having a place where everything comes in and then is digitally moving, oh, this order is from New Jersey, we're going to automatically ship it to send it over to that warehouse to be filled. And we're going to pick up the inventory from New Jersey and the inventory from California. We're going to put them in together so both of them are added up in Shopify, so that we're not going to go out of stock because we know exactly what's at each one. And maybe we're going to set up complex routing rules where if New Jersey's out of stock, we're going to send it to California and they're going to send the order so the customer still gets the order. Or maybe we decide we don't want to do that because it's more expensive. That's going to trigger a warning for customer service to write to that customer and let them know that there's a problem with the order. That changes that dynamic of what the operations team is working on every single day. And it puts them in a position where they are proactive and they can plan instead of just going in and troubleshooting and problem solving all the time. But having a really good order management tool in place that is scalable and stackable and you can add to it, like a USB hub on your laptop, you've got 2 ports and you have 7 things plugged in. It's the same thing. So a really good order management hub allows you to grow. You can add EDI, you can add more sales channels, you can add more warehouses, and it's just adding more plugs and then going into the brain and telling it what you want to do. So for growth and scalability, to get from multi-channel to omni-channel, and it's all in one. I can see it all. I have control over everything. And then the next step on omni-channel is, say you're selling at Target and somebody left something in their cart and didn't buy, and you have their cell phone geo-tracked, and you see that they are pulling into the Target parking lot. You send them a text message saying, hey, that product that was in your cart is in the store.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's really going cool places.
That's incredible. Love that.
Yeah.
Omni is a whole new level. It's like multimodal, got to go on all these different physical.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. One last question, I guess, on our end. This podcast, as we said in the beginning, is all about profits. A company can have a great product, great distribution, but if they're not running a tight operation, they're going to be losing money. And this is no longer the times of 2020s when money was free. Companies have to get efficiency with cash flow and profit margin. So last question, I guess, to give the listeners an insight they could walk away with. What is one strategy that you consistently saw, not necessarily to operations, but to profitability? How do we increase people's profits that you've seen through the different brands that you've worked with?
So, it's hard to say the word 100%.
Yeah.
I guess that's two words, but it is almost all the time related to manual processes, whether
Mm,
that be spreadsheets or having EDI that is not automated to your warehouse, or sales channels that are disconnected that you're pulling things from manually. Your operations team is being paid a certain amount of money per hour. Even if they're on salary, you can figure out what they're getting paid.
yep.
Every manual process is something that is going to cost you more money. I
Yep.
had a CPG company I was working with that had a manual process to figure out demand planning and procurement and purchase orders. And I laid out all of the steps, and it had 37 steps to just one segment of that process. And then I applied time values. Turned out to be a 29-hour process to
Oh my.
do their demand plan and their purchase orders for procurement. And there were 3 to 4 spreadsheets that they were manually updating with the same information that weren't tied together. There's a cost to those 29 hours. Figuring maybe you're paying someone $25 an hour,
Yep. That's
whereas a really good demand plan software and connecting things, making it automated, would have changed all of that.
and it feels like that's like kind of the future as well. It's giving people the power to do more with less. Either it's
Yeah,
open ChatGPT or it's software, but automation, making people more impactful, do more with their time, is you're saying is more or less consistently an area to improve your profit margins.
absolutely. Instead of that manual process where they were updating 3 and 4 spreadsheets at the same time, if there was a digital process doing the same thing, now that person is free to do. Maybe they're going to contact all of your suppliers and renegotiate your contracts and get better terms, better payment terms, or
Yeah,
better prices, or that person is freed up to take the next step towards profitability in other areas too. So not only have you saved on those 29 hours, and it's not going to go down to zero because they're still going to be running the software. Maybe you can get it to 5.
yep,
Well, that gives 24 hours of their time that can go to something else that can increase profitability.
absolutely love that. This is amazing. Kathleen, thank you so much for coming today. I know everyone that's listening will take multiple golden nuggets out of this conversation. And again, thanks so much for your time and thanks for joining the Profits Podcast.
No problem, Izzy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.